Hello and welcome to this week's Give It to God live call hosted by Alison Larkin. I'm Sarah Hawksworth, Ali's colleague, here to walk you through a bit of housekeeping on how the call will run and what you can expect. Ali will open the call in a few moments and she'll speak on today's theme for 50 to 60 minutes, and we'll then open the call for 30 minutes of Q&A. There's two ways you can interact during the Q&A. You can come on the call and speak to Ali directly and ask your question and receive some one-to-one coaching, which is what she prefers. She likes to vibe live with people. Or you can just submit your question in text form and Ali will answer it. This call is being recorded and will be posted to Ali's YouTube channel in a few days. But if you'd like to talk to Ali directly without your voice or your name being posted on YouTube, that's not a problem. We can remove it from the recording. Just please let us know. We also all communications posted into the Q&A rather than the chat to make sure we don't miss any of your questions, and you can post them at any time during the call. You don't have to wait until the Q&A section is open. As I said, the recording will be posted on Ali's YouTube channel, which is at Alison Larkin on YouTube, but we recommend having a pen and paper handy so you can take notes during the call as well. And if you'd like to join us on next week's call, if you are watching the recording on YouTube, you'll find the link to join below. I'll now hand over to Ali for today's call.
Hello and welcome to Give It to God. Okay, so I am traveling and it's been quite wonderful but wild 24 hours, over 24 hours since I left the UK, along with my gorgeous 10-year-old in tow. It's the first time, well, the second time in her life, but the first time I've done a big, huge trip like this with just me and my daughter. And it was probably more challenging than I thought it would be, but also lovelier in a lot of ways, which I'm going to speak about on today's theme. So I'm in a different time zone. Spent 17 hours traveling yesterday. I'm a little bit tired. And there's lots going on this morning in the house before I come on the call. Francis is now off school for a couple of weeks before the official summer holidays begin in Malta. And so everything's a bit up in the air, but I'm here giving it to God, which is the theme of every week's call. And this week's theme is last week we spoke about what we would give to God, and this week we're going to speak about why we would give to anything to God in any case to begin with. So I will speak on that, as Sarah said, until the top of the hour. And if you've got any questions on anything that I say, anything that I touch on, if anything that I say makes you feel any certain way in your body, then just write a question in the Q&A and I will answer it after the call, and we can vibe together on a hot seat, or I will just answer it freestyle myself. We start every call with 5 to 10 minutes of silence to get everybody on the call back into their bodies, out their head, back into their body, to still the body, to go into the stillness, go into the void, go into the silence where God resides. God is all around us and every single thing that we can see and do. But in order to appreciate the best communication with that God energy we carry within, the best way to do it is to sit in silence and sit in stillness and hear what comes up through the body, because the messages come from God through the silence, through the body. So we will do that and then we will have a short prayer. I'm also going to touch a bit on the meaning, on the what I mean about prayer, and what prayers I do every day, and then we will move forward with the theme, which is why give it to God. Okay, so I'm asking everybody who's new on the call to bear with me a bit this week. It's I'm still learning how to do this format, but it's not usually as wild and chaotic as what this past, I'm going to say 72 hours have been, but definitely with 24 hours of traveling. And I made a promise to myself when I started doing these calls that I would always show up every Wednesday at the same time, even if I'm in a different time zone. And unless it was an absolute emergency, then I would not be moving the call and I wouldn't be cancelling it. So I'm here keeping that promise to myself and keeping that promise also to God, because God put that promise in my heart. So if you're sitting comfortably, if you're watching this on catch up, then I'm going to ask you to still go into the silence with us, even though you're not here live. I'd like everyone to be sitting comfortably. You can have both feet on the ground, that's where I'm sitting just now, or you could be sitting up on the sofa with your legs crossed, you could be lying in bed, you could be doing whatever you want to do to get comfortable while we go into the silence together. Close your eyes. And while we're sitting in the silence, um, just just hear what comes up through your body, be aware, witness what your mind does, what the chat in your mind does, what your body does. Like, is your brain constantly having that conversation with you, that your mind constantly chats? Do you see images? Do you hear things? Do you feel sensations in your body? Only when we go into the silence and into the stillness can we become aware of the fact that we are the watcher of this physical system that we live in. So just close your eyes and let's go into the silence together. And this week, I'm going to check the time before I do it and then check the time when I come out. Okay, I'm going to invite everybody to come back into the room now, physically, literally, spiritually. I have a little drink of my tea before we begin. At this point, I just want to ask the creative energy that is God, that is resides in everything, every single thing on this planet, and it resides in our soul and our bodies, and our physical makeup, to speak to everybody on this call while I'm speaking. I want that energy, that divine creative energy that is the highest form of unconditional love that's in all of us, to speak through the bodies of the people that are sitting on the call today. Maybe the voice inside of you will tell you something through the stories that I tell you. Maybe they'll trigger a memory or a feeling, an emotion, a story within yourself, that something that God wants you to look at, something that God would like you to come and speak to me about, something that you would like to come and speak to me about. All I ask is that that divine energy sits in this room with us and sits at the forefront of our consciousness throughout the next 90 minutes and flows through everybody in the room. And that energy, the energy of God, is what created every single thing that we can see on this planet. The theme of this week is why do we give it to God in any case? Why not just go through life without any connection with that God and without any acknowledgement of it? I'm going to start by telling a story of a time in my life where I was not in connection with that energy within myself. In fact, I was probably as far turned away from it as I've ever been. And it was a really challenging period that lasted for, I want to say that it lasted for 4 months, but if I'm being completely honest, it probably lasted for 4 years. But the most challenging part of it was condensed into this 16-week period. I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, but I just want to repeat the story and give it a different slant this time. In 2016, I gave birth, I went into labour at 24 weeks and 1 day pregnant. So it was a Wednesday evening, my waters broke, and I went into labour. I presumed at the time that I was having a miscarriage. I didn't know that babies could survive at 24 weeks, much less go on and have a great life as my daughter has, or is living. I was in the best physical shape of my life, thankfully. The very, very best physical shape. My daughter's father's a personal trainer, so I was working out, multiple times per week. I was eating the best diet I've ever had in my life, like the best um eating plan, not even eating plan, it was just our way of life. This is the way that we were always eating. And I had given up alcohol. Physically, I was in tip-top condition from top to bottom, which I think was a guiding light from God within us for me to be able to survive and also get through the 2 day labour that followed when my waters broke. And so I gave birth to Frances at 24 weeks and 3 days into my pregnancy. She weighed 650 grams. And the doctor told me on the first night of her life that she had about a 10% chance of surviving the first night. And if she survived from there, then from then on in, what we would hope for is for her to get bigger and stronger. I would say that I was in the best physical health in my life, but it was a period in my life, and there have been others since then when I would say I was in the worst spiritual health of my life. And that imbalance, I think, when I look back on it now, I believe that it was the God within me giving me all this physical strength where I was really, really lacking in spiritual strength and spiritual acknowledgement of spirit, of God, of the energy of unconditional love that we carry within us. And what followed was 16 weeks of, for me, sheer hell. I was constantly on a knife's edge, like just constantly walking about, feeling like anything could tip me over the edge at any moment. I was absolutely terrified that this little girl was not going to come out of the hospital alive. every minute of the day, I just had in my mind that she was going to die. I used to plan her funeral in my head, and I would be planning her funeral and planning my own funeral straight after it because I was like, I'm never going to survive this. And I remember a couple of years later coming to this realization that like if I could have if someone had sat me down on day one after Francis was born and said, look, she's going to come out the hospital. She'll come out on the 8th of June, the day that she's due, 16 weeks from now, and she's going to be happy and healthy and she's going to go and have a really, really great life. But for the next 16 weeks, she's doing her growing outside of the womb, and that's going to be challenging for you. There's going to be many roller coasters, but she is 100%. I can tell you right now, some this imaginary person has sat me down, and this imaginary person, later transpired that it was God, but I just couldn't hear that voice at the time. If someone had sat me down and said that to me, look, I can tell you with 100% accuracy that this child is going to survive and she's going to go into a great life and she'll come out the hospital, then just think about that. Like I would have been so much more relaxed. Yeah, the challenges still came with the infections that she had, the times when she had to have blood transfusions, the times when she had bleeding on the brain, all the different things that happened. But the constant thing in the back of my mind was a fear that she was going to die. I wasn't afraid of anything else that was going to happen, like the I remember asking the neonatologist, would she ever walk or talk? And he said, I don't know. And I was like, okay, but I wasn't afraid of that. I wasn't afraid of having a baby that couldn't walk or talk, or having a baby that came with a lot of like disabilities or challenges or anything like that. My biggest fear was that she was going to die and that I didn't know if I would be able to cope with that myself and survive that myself. And I have an older daughter who was actually going through her GCSEs at the time, and along with the fear of losing Francis and possibly subsequently losing my own life through the grief, I had it was never at the conscious part of my brain, but it was always there running in the background. Was, well, how would Ailey survive in the world without me? And it was just this really, really challenging period where I was running on autopilot. I was running on adrenaline. I was getting up every morning. I was still working. I would do. I owned a personal training company program with Francis' dad, and we would do live workouts every morning in a group on Facebook. So I'd do them at 6 a.m. Then I would go and sit in the neonatal unit for the full day. I'd be answering emails, answering text, Facebook messages, setting up campaigns on emails, running the program, doing everything in between expressing milk and sitting at the incubator holding Francis' tiny hand. I was still, so the nurses would take me to one side and they would say, you're doing too much, you're pushing yourself too hard, like you're constantly like this, like you're going to crash and burn, was one of the things that was said to me more than once. And I thought that I knew best, got a very, very strong ego, thought that I knew better than the nurses, would, place myself in this hierarchy where I was above them, where I was like, well, they don't know what it's like. We've got this business that we've got to run. They don't know what it's like to, I remember one of the nurses one night saying to me to go home and have a glass of wine, and I was absolutely horrified that a nurse had said this to me. That I was like, she's telling me to go and have alcohol, and I was very, I lived this very, very healthy lifestyle, and I was really like so incensed with rage that this woman had said this to me. I was like, this woman's in the medical professional and she's telling me, and the woman had told me to have one glass of wine to relax myself to be able to fall asleep. And I was expressing milk at the time, and I was like, what would I do with the baby's milk? It'll have alcohol in it and stuff. She's like, just throw it out and just start, express the next morning or 12 hours later. I was so angry, and now when I look back and I'm like, this woman was doing all she could to try and help me relax in my body. She was just giving me all these different ideas and suggestions, and this rage that was inside of me, which was really sadness, which was really fear. I just wanted to fight everyone. And I've spoken about this so many times in the past where I grew up in an environment where there was loads of kids in the house. We were all loud and outgoing and funny. And I grew up in a town where, there's a lot of Scottish stoicism. So my fight or flight response has always been fight, like I will fight. Um, I'm fascinated by people's fear responses, by what happens when someone goes into a state of fear, like how they react. And this is going to tie in with my 17-hour trip yesterday. 17 is my favourite number as well, so that's why I keep referring to it as my 17-hour trip. That um if I'm tired, if I'm physically tired, if I'm spiritually tired or mentally tired, or if I'm in a state of fear, then my go-to reaction is always fight. Which comes across as anger, sarcasm. It is its smallest form is sarcasm, then it goes up to anger, and then it goes up to, like standing up and make myself bigger and raising my voice and wanting to actually physically fight people, not for a long, long time. And that was how I was throughout the 16 weeks, because I was in such a state of fear the whole time. I was angry at God, like I've spoke about this before. I was very, very angry. When I look back, I'm like, I prayed every day. I prayed every single day. Please, please make this baby survive. Please make this baby be okay. Please make us get through this. Who was I saying those words to? Who, like that's a form of prayer. Who was I saying please to? What version of me was saying please, and who was I saying it to? And prayers were said for Francis, masses were said for Francis. I come from a big Catholic family. Masses were said for Francis all over the world. And people would send me like prayers through the post, and my mum would call me up. She would say, they say the mass in this church, and or this chapel, I should say. My mother will not be happy if she's watching this from somewhere in the ether. Um, they're saying all these prayers for her, and I the whole time I was just really, really angry at God. I was just like, how could you do this to me? Like, have I not been through enough? And it's been a recurring theme throughout my life where I've raged at this God that I grew up with, where I'm like, I've been through enough. It's something that I used to say it all the time as well, and even up until last year, I would say it after I had the miscarriage, I'd be like, no, I've been through enough. Like, stop giving me these things to go through. I have been through enough. And then coming to that realization that I am the creator of my own reality, I am the creator of my own destiny, I am the creator of everything that I desire, because I carry that creative energy within me, and so do you. And coming to the realization that there's something amiss in the system of my physical reality round about me is not shown back to me something that I am 100% happy with. Because if I'm not 100% happy with what's out there, then there's something within me that I am carrying that is disallowing, that is prohibiting me from being able to connect with that source of unconditional love that is 100% happiness. Because happiness is just being aware of what is happening. It's not joy, that's a different thing. It's just happiness of what is happening, and an awareness, a consciousness of what is happening. And this is the energy of God, the energy of unconditional love. And I couldn't connect with that. And the reason why I'll say that, I was in physically the best condition of my life, but spiritually I was not, because I was just so filled with rage, so filled with anger, and so filled with just absolute fear. Now, why would I not be? Like, I've just given birth to a 1 pound odd baby who's lying, on a life support machine. I've just been told she's got a 10% chance of survival, and I'm a mother. Of course, I'm filled with fear, but now with the awareness and with the wonderful aspect of retrospect, being able to look back and being like, what what would have made that better was if I actually trusted in that energy within myself. And that energy also manifests as mother's intuition. I couldn't hear my intuition over the fear. There were certain points where it became quite scary, where her life was, at times hanging in the balance, where I was forced into listening to my intuition. Like the last moment, it was like, no, 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 here's this thing that needs to be done. And there was this night in the hospital where she just wasn't doing well. Like, I think her breathing tube had become blocked. That afternoon, and she'd gone this really terrible colour, and she just wasn't seeming to be coming back from it. Her skin was very, very pale. She was struggling. She was struggling even on the life support machine. She was still struggling with oxygen and breathing and everything that goes along with that. And the doctors were starting to get they were starting to get really worried. You could see it on their faces. You could see it in the faces of all the nurses round about them. And I was sitting in the hospital by myself that afternoon and sitting by the incubator, and I just knew that things were getting serious and that they were getting really quite scary. And there was this one nurse. I don't know if I've ever spoke about this on these calls before, but I know I've certainly spoke about it with my clients and at like retreats and stuff. But there was this one nurse. Her name was Cherry, and the doctors were had a plan for something that they were going to do, and Cherry didn't agree with it. And she was like, no, that's not the thing that she needs. She needs this other treatment. And something inside of me just, I remember looking at this woman and being like, it always catches me by surprise when I'm telling stories like this, that there's still a lot of emotion tied up in these stories. Because even as I'm telling it now, and I am obviously tired, is that I can feel the emotion here. I can feel it in my throat when I'm talking, like that I could possibly cry when I'm telling this story. And 10 years later, there's just still, there's still emotion tied up in it. And I remember looking at her, looking at this woman, Cherry, and she was really small and like really like feisty, fiery, and being like, "What do you think? What do you think she needs? You see her every day." And the doctor had gone home. He was on call, and he'd called in to see how Frances was because they were really quite worried about her, and it was getting later and later into the night. And her dad had come back from he was away, and he'd come back, and everybody was concerned. I remember everybody standing around the incubator and me thinking, I don't know what's going to happen here. And this and just looking at this nurse, and just something inside of me was like, she's going to help me. This woman's going to help me. And I spoke to her and I said, Cherry, what do you think? What do you think she needs? Because you see her every day. The doctor doesn't see her every day, but you do. And she said, I can't remember the details of what the plan was for her. I can't remember if it was administer a medication or not administer a medication. And the doctor believed one thing and Cherry believed another. And she looked at me and she said, whichever side of the fence she was sitting on, she said it with so much resolution that something in my body was like, yeah, that's it. That's it. That's what we've got to do. And I said to her, then please go and call the doctor and tell him that I trust you. I can feel myself. Oh, did not know that was in there today. Very tired. Um, I could feel something within my body where I was like, it's her, trust what she's saying. This is it. And looking back on it now, that was me connecting with my intuition. And I remember saying to her, can you please go and call the doctor and tell him then I want to do what you say. I trust you. I want you to do it. And looking back now, I'm like, there's many nurses that I could tell you their names. Some of them we've seen sometimes, some of them we've seen every day, some of them I had a very strong connection with, and some I did not. Cherry was not one of these nurses that I was like, oh, I've got such a strong connection with this woman. Frances was only a few weeks old at this time. She'd seen over a dozen nurses, but something inside my body that day made me be like, what she's saying is the answer. And she went and made the phone call and she came back and she said, right, he's agreed. And whatever it was that they did, whatever the treatment was that night, Frances, she just started getting better straight away. And because at one point they were like, we at the time we lived quite far away from the hospital. It's like a 60-minute drive, and you've got to leave the hospital. You have to leave the baby there. Some hospitals amazingly you can stay over with the children, but in the babies, but in the one that Frances was in, we just had to leave every night, which was a huge challenge within itself. I was leaving my baby behind while I was going back home, and I I remember they said to us earlier in the evening, they didn't think we should go, which terrified me because I was like, they don't want us to go in case we get a phone call in the middle of the night and we've got to come back and it's bad news. And so she eventually she was like, you can go, she's okay, like you can go. And when I look back at that time, I'm like, that was me connecting with the spirit inside of me, with my spirituality, which manifests in women as mother's intuition, regardless if we've got a physical baby or not. Every woman walking this planet has got access to that mother's intuition. We've got a direct link to the word of God through our body, and that was the first connection that I'd had with God throughout that 16 weeks. I uh, lost it again, time and time again, many times over the course of the past 10 years since then. I've lost it again. You know, as recent ago as yesterday, I lost my connection with that divine energy within us when I thought I lost my left my mobile phone in Harrods in London Gatwick and was in a bit of a state of panic because it's got all my bank cards on it and it had my boarding passes and all that. And Francis and I had been in Harrods and Gatwick buying gifts, and then we were like, oh, we'll go and sit in the play area while we wait for our flight to be announced. And just walking back over and couldn't find my phone, and for a moment was like, oh no, like this moment of absolute panic where I was like, oh no, everything's on there, like we can't even go on the flight if I've not got my phone. And felt myself losing my connection with the divine energy within me for a minute and being like, where's my phone, where's my phone? And already at a heightened state because I'm traveling with Francis, and I keep saying this to my friends since I got here. It's such a different feeling, situation, experience traveling. I travel by myself quite a lot, but to travel with this little 10-year-old in tow, constantly just making sure she's okay, constantly looking around to ensure that she's beside me and she's able to carry her little case okay and everything. And so it was energetically taxing in a way that it's not usually when I'm traveling. And then having this moment where I'm like, oh no, I've lost my phone, which is like essentially has all of my bank cards, everything that I need is in this little box and I can't find it. And sitting Francis down in Gatwick North and being like, just sit there, Mum, is going to go back to Harrods and see if I can find it. And starting to run back to Harrods, and then just having this moment of peace coming over me and just being like, relax, relax. I hear God's voice and the voice of different people that I trust, which I think is a wonderful thing. Sometimes I hear God's voice in the form of my mother's voice. Sometimes I hear it in the form of my best friend. Sometimes I hear it in the form of different people who have been in my life currently or in the past who I trust implicitly to guide me through my life. And yesterday I heard it in a male voice. I just heard very, very clearly as I was running through Gatwick. So if you're in Gatwick travelling yesterday, you might have seen me running along. Um, I just heard relax, just relax. And I was like, oh, okay. Either the phone's going to be in Harrods and I'll get it back, or the phone's going to be somewhere between Harrods and where we were sitting and I'll get it back. Or I won't get my phone back and we'll get to the next stage of that experience, and I'll see if what God's got in store for me then. And just going into Harrods and being like, hi, I left my phone here. And the guy was like very, very laid back. He was like, no, I haven't seen it. And then going back and finding it in a random carrier bag that I must have slipped it into or dropped it into while I was doing other things. And that is a disconnect from spirit, in exactly the same way, a disconnect from God, from my spirituality. In exactly the same way, I spent 16 weeks, 90% of the 16 weeks Francis was in the neonatal unit, I spent disconnected from my spirituality, from the God within me. That 16-week period, which I can say now was essentially a 4-year period of growth, challenges, roller coasters, shadow work, dark nights of the soul over and over again. That was a period of time where everything that was inside of me was being required, everything that was inside of me that isn't God, that isn't unconditional love, that isn't an all-knowing energy, that isn't an energy of truth and connection. Everything that wasn't, it isn't that or wasn't that, was coming up to be seen, to be processed, to be purified out of my energetic system, released and then let go. I can see that now. I couldn't see it while I was in the middle of it. What's interesting is, and if I tie it back to this travel day that I had yesterday, which, I mean, a 16-week neonatal stay where your baby's constantly unwell, constantly has infections and different things going on, or 16 to 17 hours traveling in a nice airplane to a nice country and come and meet friends and have a great time. Um, they're like night and day, right? But to the nervous system, they are not. To the fear within ourselves, they are not. Fear feels like fear in the body. Fear feels like fear in the nervous system. My body doesn't know the story of, it's okay, like Frances is no longer hooked up to a life support machine. She's just now struggling with her bag walking through Gatwick Airport, and you're a bit tired, and you think that, this is your emotions are heightened and everything's kicking in, and your fight or flight's a bit kicked in because now you think you've lost your phone. Those two things feel exactly the same within the body. But the difference is the story that's attached to it. And what's wonderful now is that this ability that I have to catch myself in the moment when my fear response gets heightened, or and how I term it is when I turn away from God for a moment, because everything in this life is always perfect in every given moment, regardless of what's happening. It's perfect for the evolution of the species, because God would not make it happen if it wasn't perfect for the evolution of the species. God is a creative energy that has created a collective energy that is constantly evolving and constantly expanding. And that expansion looks like challenges as well as looks like joy. And actually, the challenges are more expansion than what the joy is, more often than not. So if I take it back to this week's theme, which is why would we give it to God? If I had this divine power, divine guidance within me, which I did in 2016, if I had conscious acknowledgement and conscious awareness that I carried that power within me, then my experience of the neonatal unit would have been vastly different. And I was in there with mothers that just did not have as much of a heightened fear response as what I did. They didn't experience the neonatal in the same way that I did. They were they were not as afraid. There's no other way to put it. They was not as afraid. Maybe their babies were not as premature as Frances, or had as many challenges as what Frances did, or maybe they couldn't connect with that feeling of fear within themselves, because maybe they'd, numbed themselves enough that they couldn't feel it, or maybe they just didn't feel it afraid. But everybody's baby was essentially in the same room going through a similar process with 10 mothers in the room all reacting in a different way. So which tells us that there is our perception of what's happening in our lives is the majority of our experience. It's the most part of our experience. So if we could experience everything that we are perceiving in our lives with an underlying knowledge that there's a higher power within us that has actually put these experiences in front of us for our own good, for our development, for our evolution, for the betterment of our lives, always, 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 7 days a week and twice on a Sunday. That's what these experiences are for. And there's nothing out there that's happening that is not in some way to show us what is happening in here. So if I'm if I lose my phone yesterday, and well, I didn't lose my phone, right? But if I, momentarily misplace my phone and my fight or flight kicks in, and somewhere in my subconscious, I'm like, me and Frances are having to be escorted out of London Gatwick because I don't have my phone and we can't go on the flight. and there's lots and lots of stuff tied up with that, with missing flights and not being able to go on flights in the past, and it's all created this and this program of my subconscious which tells me, oh, you've lost your phone, right? We've got a conscious choice here, where and I wasn't aware that a conscious choice because I was tired and I was overstimulated, that you can decide to be like, oh my, I've lost my phone and everything's going to be terrible, or you could be like, okay, I've lost my phone and well, I need to find it, or I need to get a new phone. And not immediately, my body not immediately reacting in that way, because there's always still work to be done, right? And I'm in a heightened situation. I'm in a situation and I'm going through an experience that I don't normally go through. It's not something that I don't normally take transatlantic trips with my 10-year-old. And traveling can be, especially at this time of year, and the airport's busy and there's lots and lots of energy in the room, and it's something that's a bit out of the ordinary. And I prepared myself as well as I could the day before, and that I completed all my rituals. I ate all the nutritious food. I went to bed really, really early the night before. I woke up early. I completed all my rituals in the morning. I drank my morning potion. I did my journaling. I did everything that I needed to do. And still in the midst of it, in the midst of what was essentially quite a challenging day, still found challenges. But the ability to hear that voice within myself, which comes up in the guise of other people, which I just think's so wonderful, that now I hear it's other people's voices I hear speaking to me, and it's always people that I love and trust. Do this, do that. So it's like my system, my body system understands that sometimes if I hear things in my own voice, that I might not actually do it, that my ego might take over and I might not do it. But if I hear it in the voice of people that I really love and trust, then I'm like, okay. And there's two people whose voices, sometimes I hear the two of them together, and that's when I know that I'm like, okay, I'm getting this in surround sound from these people now. And that's what I deem as just that higher energy within myself, that's just uh, manifesting in the voices of people that I have a lot of trust in. And sometimes I'll hear it in this voice, sometimes I'll hear it in this, and sometimes I hear it in both. And if I hear it in both, it's like this little tap on the shoulder. It's like, Ali, you're straying again. Like, remember who you are, remember what you've got inside of you, remember this energy you carry within you. And that is a feeling, and I think I spoke about this last week on the call, where I had this conversation with one of my clients where I was like, how do you feel now that you know that you've got this connection with God? And she actually started crying, and she was like, just relief, like a lot of relief, that I'm just like, oh, it's not all on me. Like, there's something else out there that's guiding me, or something else within me that's guiding me. And it's this word that we call God. And there's a path and there's a way, and all I have to do is just step out the way, and let the energy of that God flow through me, and let that path unfold in front of me. Another thing with that is, when you're connected to that version of the physical reality, when you wake up in the morning, you're actually excited for how the day's going to unfold. Oh, right, okay, right, this isn't just me doing this. There's an energy within me and an energy within all of us that's actually guiding us all on this trip together. And all I have to do is connect to that energy. It's like all I have to do is plug myself into that source of power, and then just watch as the day unfolds in a, a manifestation of all of my desires that I carry within me. So I'll give you an example of how that happens. Is that today is Wednesday. I had to double check what day it was, because my head's all over the place with where I am and what I'm doing. Last week, on Wednesday of last week, I believed that I was going back to Europe with my oldest daughter, that we would be spending 10 days in Europe together. Then I'd be coming back and flying back into the UK, collecting my youngest daughter and taking her down to spend the summer with us, with myself and Malta. And that was the plan, right? And that was, I had created this plan, I had decided on this plan. There was some little minor details that was to go along with it, but everything was kind of going. Then some things began to happen within the plan, which in the beginning I felt a certain way about. First thing was that my older daughter was quite clearly didn't want to come down to Malta. She wanted to stay in London. She's an absolute London girl. She wanted to stay there for the 10 days in between apartments, which I think I spoke about on last week's call, which was when I was running all over London. So she didn't want to come to Malta. She wanted to stay in London where all her friends are and, do the summer of fun in London. And I could feel myself feeling a bit agitated about it last week when I'd had a couple of days of not traveling, sorry, moving house, moving Ailey's house and driving about London and all of this stuff. And I could feel myself being a bit resistant to the fact that she didn't want to come. Well, if she doesn't want to come, what's she going to do? She'll have to stay in London. Okay. And I was trying to make these plans where okay, I'll go and then I will come back for Francis. And then this path unfolded in front of me that I did not play a big part in. I really didn't. That I had this little 10% part in this path that has now got me to here, where I'm now sitting in Canada, in Toronto, in the home of some friends of ours with Frances, who has been desperate to come to Toronto for, the past four years to see her friend who she hasn't seen for three years. She was with him 3 years ago in the summer in Portugal. They came to visit us, and now she's asked every year, can she go and see him? Can she go and see him? And it came absolutely out of nowhere. Like it didn't, obviously, like it was manifesting there in the background, and it was everything was going on energetically. And then it was this chance conversation last Wednesday or Thursday that resulted in me making a chance comment to someone that resulted in just this path, the way that it unfolded. I was like, yeah, this is God, this is God's work. Ailey, it transpired she could stay in London. She thought she was going to have to come and stay with me. No, it's fine. I can stay with my friend in London. I can go to this thing. She's got some exams she's got to do for university or some assignments she's got to do for university. I can go and do this. I can go and do that. She's off really, really happy. Frances misses a bit of school. She gets to come and see her friend that she's not seen for 3 years. She sees him on Zoom. My other friend is flying in from Vancouver. It's this big reunion is happening on Friday in Toronto, which everybody involved is like super, super excited about it. And all of this literally happened in the space of 24 hours of a chance conversation on a call, that a chance conversation with someone else, and it just all knitted itself together. And next thing you know, I'm sitting on a flight on the runway at Gatwick North, heading to Montreal. And I was like, I don't even know how this has happened. This is the hand of God. I keep saying this phrase, the hand of God, because I keep hearing about it in the football recently. This is the hand of God that has done this. This path is unfolded in front of me, and I didn't even have to do anything. All I had to do was make one phone call and then get online and start booking flights and booking Airbnbs and stuff. But other than that, I didn't. I wasn't. It was almost like I was just like this innocent bystander to this wonderful opportunity that transpired in front of me. And everybody's super happy, everybody's so excited. There's this like big wave of energy that's going along with it. We're all like, Francis and I landed here last night. Our friends collected us from the airport with a huge sign. Francis' friends up out the sunroof of the car with a sign, they're beeping their horn, and just all this joy in my body. Absolutely super tired, like right, could barely hold my head up. I was so tired. But just this joy and love, so much love from them to us and us to them, and so much excitement. And we landed in Toronto Pearson yesterday, and Frances was playing on her iPad, and she just wrote on it, "I am so happy." And that's something that's going to make me emotional for sure. Well, okay, here we go. I've wanted to bring her here for so long. Oh my. Wanted to bring her here for so long. And when I spent some time here last year, being like, I want Frances to do this. I want to take her to this park. I want to take her to this place. I want her to play in the garden with my friend's son and have all these experiences that I knew she would really, really love. And then to be like going along in my everyday life, believing that I was going back to Europe and spending, the whole summer's just going to be spent in Malta and that's it. And then God just swoops in, this creative energy, this creative force just swoops in and goes, now how about a wee 10-day trip to Toronto along the way? And you can take Francis and you can meet everybody there and we can have a big reunion and then off we'll go to Malta. And just the way that it unfolded was absolute perfection, beautiful. If I tell you that it unfolded, the path unfolded beautifully. Everything that I needed for this trip just appeared in front of me in a way that was perfect. I ordered a little carry-on case for Frances because she didn't have one to wheel through the airport. Realised that I would benefit from one of those myself. Didn't have enough time to order it through Amazon. It wasn't going to come in time, so I was like, okay, I'll walk into the town and see if I can get one like in a shop in town, and had this little moment of somewhat agitation where I was like, am I going to get one of these? And then again, give it to God. Like, you're either going to get one or you're not. That's it. If you don't get one, then you're taking your backpack and everything's great. And walked into the very first shop that Francis and I went into, walked up the escalator, and there was the perfect case sitting at the top of the stairs. And I was like, of course it is. And even Francis was like, wow. And I was like, yep, that's a case for Mama. Let's go. Picked it up, bought it, brought it home. It matches my backpack perfectly anyway. So I was like, oh, now I've got a little matching set. And Frances there with her backpack and her little carry-on case. Everything just, we got dropped off at the airport. They decided to take some of our bags and check them, even though we just had hold luggage. They were just like, no, we'll take some and check some so you're not carrying so many through the airport. It's not that we didn't have challenges, me misplacing my phone, which happened again on one of the connecting flights, but because it happened that morning, I was much more chilled out about it. And then having everything just, unfold perfectly. And even the parts that didn't unfold perfectly, there was this voice inside of me that was like, no, this is still perfect. This must be happening for a reason. This is perfect. This is happening to purify something that's within you so that you will continue that letting go process, that connection with God process, that giving it to God process. Why do we give it to God? Because I had a really, really enjoyable day yesterday on a 17-hour journey through 3 different airports with a somewhat anxious, hugely overexcited 10-year-old with me, solo parenting on a very, very hot day, carrying our bags. And I really, really enjoyed the experience. We had so much fun. We played hours and hours of X and O's. We played hours and hours of Would You Rather. We watched movies together. We had so much fun together. That version of me wouldn't have existed 5 years ago. Like, I would have just been just up to high do the whole time. I would have been so agitated in my body, so tense, so running on adrenaline. Like, just my fight or flight would have just been massively on high alert. Whereas the whole day yesterday, I was just like, just give it to God. Just give it to God. Okay, just give it to God. There were times, like, I'm not going to sit here and claim to be absolute perfection in my give it to God process. There were times where I was like, right, especially towards the end of the day, when it was getting to the stage where when we come into Pearson Airport, it's like half 11 UK time, and we've been out since 6 o'clock in the morning, or awake since six. France has been awake since 6 o'clock that morning, and out the door since 7 o'clock. So I'm like, we've been out the house for a long time. I'm starting to get tired. My body is physically starting to get tired. That's causing some agitation within my system. But just this awareness of it's just physical tiredness. It's just physical tiredness. You'll be okay. Give it to God. Just still giving it to God, giving it to God. And then getting here and just having this, and the energy of love that Francis and I were just totally like swept up in by our friends. It gave us this second wind at the airport. Like, we were standing waiting to be picked up at the airport, and the two of us are a bit like, I'm leaning against this post, and then the car just pulled up, and it was just like the energy of love that was within the car, where everybody gets out the car with these big huge smiles on their faces, so happy to see the two of us. And all of a sudden the physical tiredness was just like meh, and everything just went up again. And Francis you know, she's out playing in the garden or the yard, they call it here, at 9:30 last night, which is UK time, 2:30 a.m. this morning. And I was like, how is she still going? Like, how is this child going? She's been awake for nearly 24 hours. Like, she's just got so much unconditional love in her. She's just got so much excitement for the world round about her. She's got such a connection with spirit. She's got such a connection with God. She doesn't question that connection with that huge energy that she carries within herself. So she's just connected to it so much more than what adults are at all times. Yeah, she's got fear in her system. She was, you know, she's 10. She's starting to get to that stage where she was a bit like, what if the bags don't come off the carousel, and what if they forget to pick us up at the airport? And I was explaining it to her, I was like, you're physically tired, so because you're physically tired, your body feels like it's afraid, so you've got to scan the horizon looking for something to be afraid of. So if the bags don't come off the carousel, okay, right, we'll get them tomorrow, they'll deliver them to the house, or we'll figure it out. If they don't come and collect us at the airport, then we'll get an Uber, or we're going to stay in that hotel across the street. There's a solution to every single challenge that arises. There's a solution to it. We can only reach that solution. We can only access that solution. We can only vibrate at the same frequency as that solution when we realize that we are not in charge of it. We're not in charge of the problems or the challenges, and we're also not in charge of the solutions either. We're just innocent bystanders to all of it. And the way that we connect through is through our bodies, through stillness, through silence, through, first of all, an acknowledgement and a consciousness that we are not in charge, ever, ever, ever. And when you're not in charge, it feels really, really good. It feels really relaxing. It feels really enjoyable. Things that used to be a challenge are no longer a challenge because your perception of it just completely changes. I've got to that stage in the call where if you've got a question about what I've said today, then I would like you to ask it. Just put it in the chat now so that then when I'm getting towards my wrap up, I can go through any questions that we've got. If you've got a question on anything that I've said today, or if you've got a question on perhaps you've got something in your life that feels like a challenge at the moment, or something that feels like something in your physical reality, the manifestation of your energy that's shown in your physical reality that feels like it's causing you anything that's agitating you, anything that's challenging you. It could be something physically, it could be something mentally or spiritually, it could be, you know, pain in your leg or headaches or pain in your bank account or pain in your relationship that you feel a certain way about, and that certain way is not unconditional love and curiosity. Then this is the time to submit questions about that. Remember, you don't have to come on and chat with me using your voice. You can also just do it via text. So if you do have a question, but the theme, so I'll keep going with the theme, and if you've got any questions, then just put them here, and then we'll get them answered. And don't worry if there's no questions. I'm feeling quite tired, so if I've not got any questions today, I'm not going to cry about it. I know that it's God going. Ali needs to be wrapping up and going and relaxing for a bit in the garden before she goes and does other things today. Why do we give it to God? Why would you not just why not just go through life and being in a state of it's your life and it's your existence, and you have to control it, and your mind has to make sure that everything's okay, and your brain has to make sure that everything happens and transpires and unfolds in exactly the way that you want it to unfold. If I take it back to that 16-week experience in the neonatal unit, it happened perfectly, right? The Francis's stay in the neonatal unit was exactly the way it was supposed to be. How do we know that? Because that's the way it was. If I had to go through anything like that again, I've got the benefit of hindsight and retrospect, and now a much, much stronger connection with the energy of God, where I know that I'm not just in this alone, that actually there's an energy that is flowing through every single thing on this planet that is guiding me and supporting me and helping me along the way to my greatest desires. My desire when I gave birth at 24 weeks was for my baby to make it home from the neonatal unit. That was my desire. I was always going to get that desire. how did I know that I was always going to get it? Because she came home. That's what happened. So I got the desire in spite of the fact that I wasn't connected to the source that created the whole challenge in the first place. I got the desire despite the fact that I was making it more challenging for myself with some of the things that I was doing and saying and the disconnect that I had. I still got my desire. I was in such a heightened state of fear that when I got my desire, I just put my fear somewhere else and just found other things to be afraid of and found other ways to numb myself from that fear. And that's the process. That's the process until we know that we are in a state of fear, that we are vibrating at fear, that we do have stagnant fear in our energetic system. And all that is a lack of God in our system, a lack of connection with God, a lack of acknowledgement of God, of the fact that we are not in control. We've never been in control, that there's a glorious path throughout life, and all we have to do is just be on that path without resisting it. Any resistance that comes up in the form of physical, spiritual, or mental comes up to show us what we're holding within ourselves. Yesterday, when I thought I'd lost my phone in Gatwick, that was to show me that you're becoming a bit heightened again, Ali. Like, look at what's happening. And I was walking through the half running and then realised I was running, which by the way, I don't really run. So that was an experience as well in my little dress and my sandals. And I'm running along and I heard this voice of this man that I trust implicitly saying, "Relax, Ali, relax." That was it. And what was happening was for maybe about an hour before that, I needed to hear his voice saying relax, and I couldn't. So what God created, my body created, the energy within me created was a situation where I would fake losing my phone so that I could be running along, so that I could hear relax, so that I could understand it. It don't just mean relax now in conjunction with the not missing phone, but just relax. Like you're doing really, really well. You're doing really good like in this experience. By the way, like I'm talking about this traveling as if it's like the absolute worst thing in the world. I saw women in Toronto Pearson last night that were clearly traveling with newborns by themselves, and I'm not sitting here, claiming that this is a terrible hardship and poor me. All I'm saying is there's a version of me that existed a few years ago that just would have not had the experience that I had yesterday. My little girl would not have had the experience that she had yesterday, which was a somewhat, not somewhat, like a relaxed, enjoyable experience. I mean, she did ask literally every 15 minutes on the flight, and I mean literally, and it was a 7-hour flight. She asked every 15 minutes, when will we get there? Even though on the screen in front of us, I had shown her, how to track the flight. And she just kept saying to me, but I don't understand what that means. So like every 15 minutes she would tap me on the arm and say, how long now, Mala? And I would tell her the time, minus 15 minutes that I told her before. And in the end up I just started like being a bit liberal, a bit I had a bit of poetic license with the time. And at some points I was just saying 20 minutes. just just to like alleviate how she was feeling, because she'd be like, oh, it's still 2 hours, and then I'd be like, she'd be like, how long? And I'd be like, oh, about half an hour. And she'd be like, oh, half an hour, yeah. And then like 3 hours would pass and she didn't even realize, because she doesn't understand the concept of time yet, because it's not real anyway. And I was just like, okay, like, and was it challenging being asked every 15 minutes how long till we get there? I mean, is that challenging? I've got a little girl that can walk and talk, and she's 10, and she's sitting there next to me on a flight to go and visit her friends in a nice city. Is that challenging? No, it's not. Was there times, one of the hundreds of times that she asked me, that I felt a bit challenged by it? Yeah. Um, the answer every time is give it to God, give it to God. And I don't know if I've actually shown this on the camera before, where I've actually got give it to God tattooed on my arm, which is where the names come from. And I've had that tattooed there since 2021. Um, it's the answer to everything. It's there on my arm so that I can see it every single day. It's on my left forearm. It's because it's the answer to every single thing on this planet. Everything, every single problem that you're having, give it to God. Give it over to the higher energy. Give it over to a more powerful divine source of energy that knows the answers. It's infinite wisdom. It's got the answer to every single challenge, problem, whatever you want to call it, adventure that you will ever go on. No problems are ever created without a solution created at the same time. We just can't access the solution if we are vibrating at the same energy that created the fear, that created the problem. And these problems are always created from an energy of fear, and they're created to show us that we are vibrating at an energy of fear. Like, how immensely clever is that? How immensely intelligent that is, this infinite wisdom that I'm talking about, that our bodies create. My body created that situation yesterday where I couldn't find my phone and was running through the airport looking for it, so that a butterfly just flew right into the window. That was really, really lovely. It didn't hurt itself. It just flew out the window and then flew away again. But it was huge. It's totally distracted me there. My body created that situation where I'm half running, half skipping, half power walking through Gatwick, so that I could hear that voice inside of me saying, relax, not just for that moment, but for the full day. That's the answer. Relax. It's the answer to everything. Relax and hear God. Relax and hear God. Relax and hear God. That is the answer to every single thing. If your body is tense, if you've got tension in your jaw, your shoulders, if you're in your head thinking, but I've got to do this and then I've got to do that, the answer is always relax and hear God. Give it to God. Why would we do that? Because it's much more enjoyable. It's much more fun. Every experience that you have, when you perceive it as an experience that you're supposed to have, that God wants you to have, for either for the purification of stagnant energy out of your system, or for you to learn something as you're observing it and perceiving it, then it's just so much more fun. It's great fun. It's enjoyable. It's exciting. It's full of surprises. Like I said, with the trip here for the next 10 days, I couldn't have created this trip by myself. I couldn't have created this with my mind, with my thoughts. Oh well, why don't I go and ask this person this, and then I'll go and ask that person that, and then I'll go and book that flight, and I'll do this and I'll do that. No, what I had to do was just be in my body when someone made a comment, and me going, oh, that sounds a good idea. And being in my body and being able to feel that energy through my system and being like, yeah, that could work. Okay, that might work. And then carried away with the momentum of it. That was how I knew that it was the right thing, because I felt an impulse, like a surge of energy through my body when I had the first conversation. Then I had the second conversation, and there's so many moving parts, the conversation with this person, that person, that person, all these moving parts. But throughout it all, I just had this, oh, I feel excited about this. I feel a surge. This is it. This is we're doing the right thing here. And then all the steps just opened up, opened up, opened up. Did it come with some challenges, booking a transatlantic flight 72 hours in advance, and then having to, get all the cases sorted and get everything sorted. I thought it was the butterfly, but again, it's my own reflection of my hands in the window that was distracting me. Um, get everything sorted, get the visas sorted, get the passports, get everything ready. Did that come with some challenging moments? Yes, of course. By the way, hugely, immensely grateful for these somewhat challenges that I believe I have in my life. It's not challenges. It's not a challenge. What the biggest challenge was, 10 years ago, watching my child on a life support machine. Yeah, that's a challenge. Walking yourself through Gatwick Airport, on a lovely Tuesday afternoon, it's not that much of a challenge. But like I said, like if my central nervous system is not aware, then the two of them can feel just as challenging. But the experience of it, the point I'm trying to make is, which me, like, I will make the point. I'll go around 10 different stories and 10 different houses before I get to the point, but I will get there, hopefully. Is that everything becomes more enjoyable. Every experience becomes more fun. Every experience becomes something that you're actually in the moment for, and you can feel in the moment, and feeling all the feelings. That's what we're here for. The immense joy and happiness and love that I felt in my body last night when I watched Frances hug her friend who she hasn't seen for 3 years. And the two of them, they're 10 and 11. He's a bit taller than her. And just the joy on these two little kids' faces when they seen each other for the first time in so long. I would have traveled for 100 hours to see that. It was absolutely beautiful to watch. It was beautiful to be a witness to. I was getting ready for the call this morning. They're in the hallway, they're playing with Lego, the two of them are laughing, they've got such a great bond together. And I was like, God created this trip. Like, I just stepped out the way. I thought I was going somewhere else. I thought I was going to be in sunny Southern Europe right now with my oldest daughter, and then in the way that it transpired with the little things of, understanding that my oldest daughter didn't want to come and being a bit agitated by that, and then just this just beautiful path just opening up and being like, no, here's the thing that you can have. And I was chatting with my friend last night, and it's um God always gives you the equivalent or better. That was what we were talking about. The equivalent or better. That's it. So you've got this situation that you're in, this experience that you're having. Then if you connect with God, then God will give you more. So the equivalent will give you more of this joyful experience that you're having, or better. So I'm standing there last night at the airport watching everybody hug and feeling all the love and being like, so I get this or better. I mean, how do you even get better than this? How do I get better than watching two of my favourite little people in the whole world hugging each other and hugging me, and just being like, oh, what's better than this? What's coming? It's so amazing. It's so exciting. What's coming after this then? If I just get out the way and give it to God and connect with God. And that is always the equivalent or better. So, and you can ask for that. That's what we do in prayer. You're enjoying yourself. I was sitting in the garden this morning and it was warm and my feet are in the grass, and I'm just sitting there in the peace, and I woke up super early. I was the first awake because of the time zone, and I'm just sitting there and I was like, this or better, the equivalent of this or better for the whole summer, for the whole summer. It's going to be so wonderful, so beautiful, and whatever comes up along the way is coming up to show me something that I'm carrying within myself. It's coming up as maybe a challenge or an adventure or any of these things, so that God can be like, oh, look at this thing that you're still carrying within yourself from this episode before, or from that, and how can you go through that spiral of situations again, but this time do it with a greater connection to your source energy, with a greater connection to that highest power that you carry inside, with a greater connection to God. Every that 16-week stay in the neonatal unit, thankfully that exact replica of that is not happened to me again. But there's been other 16-week scenarios, or 16-month scenarios, or 4-year scenarios, where it's the same thing. It's the same pattern of behavior. I have a desire, something that happens on the way to the desire. I don't like it. It causes fear in my body. I resist it. I slow down me getting the desire. The minute that I stop resisting reality, stop aligning myself with fear of not liking the way that the reality is unfolding, and just allow it to unfold, the desire comes to me quicker. So I've wanted to bring Frances to see her friends here in Toronto for a long time. If I'm trying to create it in my logical mind, well, we could do this and then we could do that, and it just takes longer. And then it's just like one random Wednesday afternoon just being like, or Thursday afternoon just being like, oh no, actually it could work this way. And that just felt easy, joyful, beautiful, peaceful, calm, divine. That's what it felt like. That's what this trip felt like. That's what the unfolding of it felt like. So why would I be asking you to give any of your problems or your challenges or your adventures? Why would I ask you to give it over to God? Because I want you to have those unfoldings in your path the same way I've had this past week. I want you to feel that joy in your body and experience that joy and that sense of safety and relief and connection. I want it for every single person watching this, every single person on this call, every single person that comes every week. I want you to know that you're carrying something within you that is the divine infinite wisdom of this whole planet as a collective. It creates planets, there's so much creation that we can't even fathom, that we can't even think about right now, is all out there in the quantum field waiting to be created. And we all carry that energy within us, so we can create trips to Toronto, or new lives and new countries, or new relationships, or a whole new way of being, a whole new life for ourselves. We can create that from a place of connection, or we can create it from a place of lack of connection, which manifests as fear. And that just feels so much more challenging than anything else. And that's not what I want for you. What I want for you is for you to feel this joy and feel this peace and feel this serene way of living. And anything that comes up that's not that, then also just having this perception of it like, oh, amazing, this is so good, we've got a challenge, there's something great coming after the challenge. So, you know, what transpires after um, losing my phone yesterday is just so much ease walking through because I became back into my body and I relaxed myself again. So much ease. They called our flight. We walked through. We were one of the first people on the flight because I had Francis with me, and they were like, "No, you've got a child. You come up first." We were one of the very first people sitting on the flight. We had great seats. We had a great time. That came after the little mini full challenge of I can't find my phone and having this little probably about 3 minutes of some agitation in my body, and then hearing that divine voice of God that was personified by someone I love saying, no, just relax, relax. And me being like, okay, come back into the body and relax, give it to God. Why do we give it to God? Because it feels better. That's it. That's all I can tell you. We've not had any questions. So I am going to go and enjoy the rest of my vacay. I've got some awesome stuff planned for today. I will be back next week in the same time zone as what I am now, which by the way, it's 9 a.m. here. And I made a promise to myself when I first started doing these videos that whatever challenges come up along the path, I would be here every single week at the same time, and I would be talking on this subject of giving it to God and whatever theme comes up in my body that week, and I'd be answering questions, and the calls will always be here and they'll always be available to anybody that wants to come along. I paid extra special attention when Miss Sarah was going through the introduction today, so I know that if you want to come on next week's call, the link is below. That's what she said, the link is below. So I made sure to pay attention so that I don't sit here at the end of the call and go, is the link below or is it in the comments? I don't know the answer. So yeah, the link is below. And you can join us on next week's call. Maybe you're watching this on catch up. Maybe you've come along this week just as a one-off to see what it's like. And maybe you like some of the things that you've heard, maybe some of the stuff that you've heard you're intrigued by, and you want to come next week and you'll have enough bravery and courage within you to ask a question, which I would absolutely love. But I do realise that it does take a lot of bravery and courage to put yourself out there in situations like this and come and tell someone like me your challenges and have us sift through them and offer a different perspective of them. So I would love it if you would come along from watching this video, come along, sit with us, pray with us, sit in silence with us, and give it to God with us, with everybody here on the call. So I shall see you next week, and I'm off to have a really, really great vacation with lots and lots of vacation, like I'm totally Canadian now. Holiday with lots of people that I love and who love me and my daughter, and we're really, really excited about it. So I'll be bringing lots of energy to next week's call. Apologies that I'm a little bit tired, physically tired. My body is physically tired from yesterday's travels, but we're being very well looked after as always. And I'll be back next week and I'll see you all then. So this week, just remember, give it all to God, all of it, everything, every problem, every challenge, everything that you've got within you. Just give it all to God and watch as your glorious path unfolds. It'll be amazing. See you all soon. Bye.